OK, well, similarly to Manchester City, Arsenal, also in the title race, face a team that are fighting for survival. They go to West Ham on Sunday. So let's hear from Mikel Arteta, but first, David Moyes.
I don't know if there's less expectation. Not from me, that's for sure. My expectation is for me, every team I put out is to win, and we'll put out a team which hopefully we can try and beat Arsenal. So that's part of it. Last year we challenged a lot of the so-called top teams and gave them really good games. Some we beat, some we didn't. So we'll try and do the same against Arsenal.
Hello, Mikel.
Hello.
Thank you for your time. Can we have any injury updates, please, particularly William and Eddie?
William is still not available. He's progressing well, and we are hopeful that we're going to have him available in the next few weeks, but we have to see. And Eddie's back. Eddie's fully fit now, and he's back.
So he's available for selection?
Yes.
And with William Saliba, we didn't see him training at the Open training earlier in the week. Does he get back on the grass or not yet?
He's not far of starting to do that. Obviously, we need to be cautious because of the injury, but he's evolving well.
A lot of the players were seen to be very, very upset by that late goal that Liverpool scored. Are you pleased that they're that upset?
Yeah, we should be. When you concede in the last few minutes, you have to be upset because we wanted to win the game. But then as well, we have to be realistic and we have to accept that we have an exceptional period in the first half where we should have killed the game, but the reality is in the second half we have really tough moments that we have to dig in, and we should have conceded a few goals as well. So that was the game.
And you say things like, for example, you know how you feel now, we need to stop that happening again.
Yeah, after the game, it's easy to say stop happening. We try to prevent that in many moments against them, and we actually did it because they're going to have periods of dominance, periods where they get you into that chaotic game that they're exceptional at, and we didn't manage to get out of that game well enough, and that's what we suffer.
Is luck, among other things, going to be a factor in the run-in to the title?
You need luck. You need luck in the right moment. That luck, why that luck is coming from, I think is really important, and how you think about it and what is going to happen. But yeah, it's another part in the sport. Sometimes about inches, and those inches has to go your way. Luck's
a factor. Obviously, fitness is going to be a factor. Potentially tiredness as well. Manchester City involved in 3 competitions still. I know it hurt when you went out of Europe, but are you now able to reap the benefits of just being able to concentrate on the Premier League?
We want our players to be as fit as possible and available, and we have certain issues, especially the last few months, with some important players, and we just want to have everybody available and fit at their best to help the team.
Are you any good at maths?
I'm quite good.
The boffins at Opta have used percentages, wizardry, to work out the possibility of the probability of who's going to win the Premier League, and they say it's Man City.
Well, when you asked them at the start of the season, for sure it was like this, so nothing has changed.
Thanks, we'll go to Anita from the Premier League.
Hi, Mikel.
Hi.
Just continuing on where you are, if you go back to the beginning of this season, did you envision, with 2.5 years under your belt with Arsenal, that with 8 games to go in this campaign, you would be fighting for the title?
Yes.
Really?
You go day by day, honestly. There is so much that happens every single day, every month in a football club that you cannot really look. Obviously, the aim and the moment that I took the job, it was to bring that club back to where it belongs, and is fighting and being around every single trophy that is possible at the highest level. And that's what we are trying to do.
Are you ahead of schedule, given that you are fighting?
We are where we are. We are happy where we are, and now we have to finish the job. And in order to do that, we're going to demand an extra bit for everybody. I love playing under him. I would go through a brick wall for him when he was my manager. I think everybody would in that squad. Really good coach, exceptional and managing the group and dealing with the individuals, and then a very special person, a really special human being, very trustworthy, and a man who honors his word, and he always did it, and someone that I learned a lot from.
Well, Mikel Arteta clearly has huge respect for David Moyes, saying he'll run through a brick wall for him. That's exactly what you want to hear one of your former players saying, isn't it?
Well, it is, but his record against Moyes has been outstanding. So it's his Arsenal team that's been running through brick walls for him against West Ham. I expect them to win. West Ham's confidence is still a little bit fragile. They did get the draw in midweek against Ghent, but I was alarmed at the fact that they allowed Ghent to get back into the match, a match that I fully expected them to win and continue that superb record they've got in the European Conference League. As far as Arsenal are concerned, they want to get back into a winning vein of form. 6 victories in a row before last weekend at Liverpool. I don't read too much into that because Liverpool have been outstanding in front of their own fans so far this season. It's been away from home that they've been shocking. I expect Arsenal to repeat the 2-1 victory from last season at the London Stadium.
Well, let's touch on that result at Anfield last week for Arsenal, dropping points, Sesh, but you actually made your Premier League debut at Anfield, didn't you, for Fulham all those years ago, so you know what it's like to play there. Do you actually see that point for Arsenal as a good point?
I think before the game, if you were playing at Anfield, you would take a point because it's such a hostile crowd, massive fan base, so you would probably take a point. But I think the nature of the game, having been 2-0 up and then to drop the 2 points, it'll probably feel like 2 points dropped. But for any player playing at Anfield, I think like the atmosphere is outstanding. You know, it's a place where you can't hide and can't go missing. Unfortunately for Arsenal, they just slipped up at the end, lost a little bit of concentration, and then dropped a couple of points. They'll be disappointed with the marking in the box. They'll be disappointed with the nature of that defeat, considering the vein of form.
He'll be disappointed with that penalty, won't he, again?
Yeah, it's unlike him.
But see, what we're seeing here underlines what Zesh is saying, because actually Arsenal should have lost this game. That penalty was so early in the game that this could well have been the winning goal rather than the equalising goal. I have to say, Aaron Ramsdale, who's in a heap in the goal there. I was at the Arsenal press conference today and Arteta was saying that Aaron has been outstanding and he's never, ever failed to justify the investment in him. £24 million plus £6 million in add-ons that they paid for him. He'd been relegated twice, remember, once with Chesterfield, once with Sheffield United, and yet he has been simply magnificent and been a key contributor in that run of form just there. It's actually 6 wins in a row before Liverpool last weekend. But they've got, I think it's the 3rd best defensive record in the Premier League. That's partly because Ramsdale's such a good organiser. You know better than me how good, how important a goalkeeper that can organise his defence is.
100%. I remember from my early days at Fulham with Edwin van der Sar in goal, who'd be non-stop in your ear. That just gives you confidence to know that you can never switch off.
What's he saying?
He's saying everything to keep you concentrated. So get out the box, stop the cross, left shoulder, right shoulder, get tighter, whatever it is to keep you concentrated. And if he goes quiet, then you can switch off. So I think it's really good to have keepers that are vocal the whole game. And then later on, Mark Crossley was also outstanding at that. So I think Ramsdale as a communicator really, really helps.
Can I tell you, have we got time for a quick story?
Yeah, you should.
Right, so I went and I watched Tuchel's Chelsea against Wolves, his very first game. And it was during COVID, so you could hear everything from the pitch, right?
That was really interesting, wasn't it?
Because the goalkeeper was Kepa, the right back was Azpilicueta, the centre half was, I want to say, Thiago Silva, and alongside him was Rudiger. And on the at left back, it was Ben Chilwell. So afterwards, we grabbed Chilwell and we say, look, all of you have different nationalities, you know. How do you communicate? He says, in football, there's only one language. And it's so true. Yeah. Everyone understands something. I mean, even if somebody is, even if you're from different countries and whatever else, there are certain things that all of you come to understand in a good, well-organised defence.
The modern game has changed a little bit. People are throwing out new terminology, but man on, squeeze, get up, get out. Foreign players pick that up very, very quickly, you know, especially if you're in a back 4 or back 5. Simple, clear, concise information, you pick it up quickly. And if you don't, if you played with a player of a certain type, then you soon find out what that means.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal's away record in the Premier League has been sensational, which isn't good reading for West Ham in their fight for survival. How do you see this playing out for the Hammers?
Well, as I say, they're in better form. They're scoring goals right now. They've had wins in each of their last 2 Premier League games before midweek when they drew in the Europa Conference League. It's weird because being at home, the fans will expect them to go out and play and they'll expect them to take the game to Arsenal. But I think that could well leave them exposed. You look at the defeats against Brighton and Newcastle, two accomplished sides that were able to pour into the spaces that were left by David Moyes' team. So I expect them to keep this quite tight. Moyes is a defensively minded manager. If you were playing, what would you expect?
Yeah, pretty similar. I think they have to be, to get the balance right, it's a home game. You want to be on the front foot. You want to get the crowd off their seats, but also you're up against a very, very good side. And you don't want to sink too deep, but I fear if they go too high too early, they'll be exposed at the back. Arsenal got willing runners that could really exploit the spaces. So I think you've got to be pragmatic, but also brave when that moments come to attack.
The one thing I do think, but the one thing I do think, no Saliba. Saliba's a real leader at the heart of the Arsenal defence. Rob Holding, sometimes he is prone to the odd lapse in concentration, and I think that's what they might do. Maybe put Antonio on to bulldoze him, and maybe Jared Bowen to take the game to Zinchenko. He was the one who failed to stop the cross in the game against Liverpool, where they were able to equalise. So maybe that might well be West Ham's best point of attack.
After back-to-back European finishes in the previous 2 seasons, have you been surprised to see West Ham where they are this season, especially after the way they invested in the summer?
Yeah, very surprised because obviously Moyes has got a very good backroom team as well, coaches, experienced coaches. So they're probably scratching their heads a little bit as to what's going on. But that can happen in football. But I think they've got a good dressing room. I think Declan Rice, Antonio, core of players that have been there and in the good times, so they'll know what it means to the club and the fans to get back to that form. But 100% it's been a surprise.
Okay.
Again, we will not be champion. If we win, we could be still there, because we cannot forget we are 6 points behind Arsenal, a team like he dropped few points during the season and playing 1 game a week with a lot of time for recovery, analyze and prepare the games. That will be so difficult to drop points. So that's why you have to be there as much as possible.
Great to see Dean Smith back in the Premier League. We'll come on to talking about his new role at Leicester in just a moment, but we have to start with Manchester City and this fascinating title race, which I feel is going to continue to twist and turn over these next few weeks, and who knows where it's going to end. But I think the really interesting thing with this weekend's Zesh is the fact that Man City play before Arsenal. So they have the opportunity to close the gap to 3 points if they win ahead of Arsenal's game on Sunday at West Ham. What sort of position does that put City in?
I think as a player, you want to play first, get your job done, and then you put the pressure on your opponent. So I think as an Arsenal player, if Man City win, then it's added incentive, motivation to go and do their job, but just adds a little bit more pressure because you know that they've already got the 3 points on the board. So it's, I think Man City are in a good position, and I prefer to play first anyway.
I love the fact that whenever these games come up and the reporters get to speak to the managers and the players, they're saying to the Arsenal team, aren't they, are you watching that City game? If you're in that position, Zesh, tell me, come on, they must be watching, because they always play it down and say, oh, no, we didn't pay any attention to it. You've got to be checking that score, right?
100%, you're checking the score. And I think if anyone says they're not, telling a little porcupine there, 100%, I know I would be. And I think if you spoke to most players, they might not admit it, but I'd say they're watching.
Does it affect you psychologically if you watch the performance and it's really good and you think, goodness me, they're in a great vein of form?
I think you already know they're really good, so it wouldn't surprise you, but it wouldn't fill you with even more confidence. It would make you think, right, it depends how you look at it. You could pile more pressure on yourself, but I think the guys at the top end, they know how to handle that, the emotional side of it. And then when it comes to play, do their job, they're experienced enough to handle that pressure, and then they go and perform. But it depends on the individual, the team, the manager, the culture at the club as well.
Darren, it's interesting because normally what we've seen of City in previous seasons, at the turn of the year in, say, January, they start to hit their rich vein of form. That didn't really happen this year. Obviously, we did have the weird World Cup break situation, but it almost feels like that rich vein of form has now happened. I think their last 3 performances, they've been sensational. They were so good in the week against Bayern Munich. Can you see this going any other way now other than Man City winning it?
No, I can't. I mean, I've been saying all the way along, and I mean, we've been joking off air, but I've always felt that City, they've been the course, they've been the distance. They are like a long-distance runner, or even with the Grand National here in England tomorrow, like a horse that knows just when to put its nose on the line at the right time. They've won their last 9 games in all competitions by an aggregate of 34-3. They've just been stunning. Look at those stats on the screen as well. 7 against Leipzig, 6 against Burnley, 4 against Liverpool and Southampton. They scored 3 against Bayern. They could have scored 10. They were that superior. And I think any 11 players that Pep puts out against Leicester will win. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to Leicester at all. I just think Leicester at the moment, I do think we'll see a bounce, new manager bounce for Dean Smith, but their concentration levels are the reason why they are where they are. Set against that, the concentration levels of City are where they are at the moment. And I think this will now go all the way down to the wire.
Well, I mean, for Manchester City, Erling Haaland just continues to score goals as well. And another record broken this week because he scored 45 goals this season. That is the most goals by any player in the Premier League era in all competitions. It's absolutely crazy, Zesh. I mean, you're probably happy that you're not playing anymore and having to defend against this guy. How would you approach it if you were?
I asked him just before exactly that question.
Stolen my question.
I think.
Well, what did you say? What did you say?
Well, I still believe it. I think whatever you do, you're wrong. So if you back yourself and you're brave and you go 1v1, then you better be very, very confident because he will get an opportunity and he's likely to take it. If you try to double up, go 2 against 1, which a lot of teams have done, or stop it, ball getting into him, someone else is free. So again, with the quality Man City you've got, you don't want them to have a spare player on the ball because even if Haaland doesn't score, he's attracting 2 and then somebody else has got that.
And what, you 6'5", 6'6"?
6'3".
6'3", okay, you're taller than me anyway.
Yeah.
How do you
Much
stop
taller
him?
than me.
How do you stop him in the air?
I think the first thing is you'd want your fullbacks to stop crosses or you want to stop the ball getting into him. But then you see it a lot at all levels. You know, if you switch off slightly, if you can't feel him, then you're not close enough. Yeah. So you have to be scanning the whole time, looking, and then concentrated for the whole time, even if you think the cross is not coming in. Where's my man? Where's the ball? I was always told.
So if you go like that and you can't find him,
you're in trouble. The ball's probably going to end up in the back of your net. So make sure if you can't see him, you can feel him.
Would that be your instinct then, to stay tight to him?
You'd have to stay super tight, basically, like a rash, because at the highest level, even this much space between me and Darren is too much. They can find Erling Haaland, and Man City players obviously can. And if he gets the opportunity, most likely sending up in the back of the net.
Well, the Leicester defenders are going to have a job on their hands. Whether it's Haaland, whether Pep Guardiola decides to play Alvarez, they've been so good going forward. And defensively, as you pointed out, that's been one of Leicester's weaknesses this season. Because actually, when you look at the bottom half of the table, they've scored more goals than any of the other teams down there. It's been defensively that's been their issue. So do you think this game is almost a bit of a write-off? How do they approach it?
Well, they can approach it as an opportunity to impress Dean Smith going into the latter weeks of the season. But I just can't see that they've got either the protection in front of the back 4, or I expect it maybe even to be a back 5 tomorrow. That's what teams that can't defend end up doing invariably. That they will try to adopt to try to stop Haaland, because as we were saying before the show, if you do stop Haaland, you still have to stop Bernardo Silva, Grealish, De Bruyne. There are so many other points of attack and players prepared to take responsibility for City that you can't just rely on stopping Haaland. And that's why I think they might go 5 at the back and really try to flood the midfield.